Good evening, everyone. This is Asian Movie Pulse Interviews. I'm Sean Barry, and tonight I am joined by independent filmmaker Yoko Higuchi. Yoko has done work as a production assistant on film sets and has also made his own productions under his founded production company, Resistance Pictures. Some of his directorial work includes short films such as Alien in Tokyo and his most recent work, Everyday Man, a fantasy tokusatsu parody. How are you, Yoko?
I'm good. How are you?
I can't complain. It's the weekend, thankfully.
Thank God.
Thank God. So yeah, you're an independent filmmaker and you've made a fair share of, really impressive short films. And your
Thank
most
you.
recent, of course, and your most recent work is, of course, Everyday Man, a fantasy tokusatsu parody, which was very enjoyable, by the way,
Thanks.
of course. My question to you, Yoko, is what inspired you to want to direct a short that was a parody, but also a love letter to tokusatsu in general?
So I've always been a Tokusatsu fan ever since I was a kid. Obviously Godzilla has always been a big influence on me, and subsequently Ultraman, Gamera, Kamen Rider, and so forth. And I thought I never had the budget or the technical skills to do a proper Tokusatsu film, and uh, obviously I'm very inspired by Hideaki Anno, and he did his, you know, very famous fan film for Ultraman, and he did also a Kamen Rider thing as well. So uh, I took that as some inspiration to do a very low budget, kind of amateurish tokusatsu film, and my film partner Michael and I came up with a story for here in New York, and my friend Chester, who lives in Japan at the moment, um, he and I have done films before, and we wanted to do a new project when I was in Japan last year, and we really wanted to do this, and it was just a my way of showing appreciation for the things that I really grew up with, and the things that I love and appreciate the most. And it was really fun to do a love letter to Tokusatsu, but in a funny kind of way, but never poking fun at it, but kind of laughing along with it, and treating the uh, genre of filmmaking with respect, but also poking some fun at the sort of the classic, like, campy absurdity of the old Showa series from like the 60s and 70s. Like, that was
Mhm.
our main goal.
Terrific. And that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I've noticed in recent years that there's been a lot of a trend in like a lot of independent tokusatsu films where it's more kind of almost portraying a condescending parody format of the genre,
Mm-hmm.
like intentionally bad special effects or,
Right.
you know, um, lip sync dubbing that doesn't match the lips. But
Mm-hmm.
the difference is with this one is that, there is some of those, poking fun of elements of that 60s and 70s campiness, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of appreciation for it,
Mm-hmm.
especially with how it's shot and edited.
Yeah.
Um, and beyond shows like Ultraman and Kamen Rider, were there other particular works that served as influence? I mean, I know you mentioned filmmaker Hideaki Anno just now.
Yes, Hideaki Anno has always been an influence on my filmography, and I did lean into the Return of Ultraman and Kamen Rider fan films that he did, and also just his more iconic works like Evangelion, and how the shot composition and the editing and the font is entirely the Evangelion font that Anno is known for. Um, and also just weird things like I rewatched Star Trek, just the original Star Trek, in preparation for this as well, since it's also it was made in a similar time in the Western TV scope. So I was trying to figure out a way where I can really capture that 60s, early 70s feel of sci-fi television. So Star Trek was one, Ultra Q is another. Um, so it was really a combination of Hideaki Anno's works, the early days of Showa Tokusatsu's shows, like you were saying, Ultraman Kamen Rider, and then on top of that, Ultra Q, and Ultra 7, Return of Ultraman, and then in the American side, I rewatched Star Trek to sort of get in that mindset of the the campy narration that my friend Michael narrates, and sort of get into that like 4:3 aspect ratio style of blocking and editing techniques. So uh, those were my main influences on this.
Alrighty. And I also like the fact that in that short film you also take a very, relatable but very like, a very relatable type of
Yeah.
plot line where it's someone, nervous in preparation for a date and dealing with their inner struggles.
Hmm.
Um, I guess my question is there a little bit of like doing a film where you're
Hmm.
going against, personal struggles? Is there something kind of comforting about that? Because, personal struggles, of course, are difficult to deal with.
Hmm. Uh, it was also my way of grounding this fantastical story, and I had to somehow find a natural way to merge the absurdity of the tokusatsu style, but setting it in modern times, and that would kind of feel disingenuous. In my opinion, if you just did a like a Showa style thing, but it was just set in modern times. I think you have to kind of address certain things, and because of the nature of the film, where we only had 2 days of shooting and we couldn't record dialogue, everything had to just be silent. So we had to somehow ground this story in a very relatable manner. And Michael had a few options as to what we wanted to do. One of the ideas was having a delivery man go to each delivery location, and then he has to like fight off a tokusatsu character chasing after him as he delivers like pizzas and stuff. But we thought that that might cost a little too much money to get like props and bicycles and stuff like that. So we scrapped that and we moved on to this idea where Michael suggested that it was a man who was just going on a date, and he had to procure these items, flour and some sweets to meet her. And the tokusatsu antagonist is a manifestation of his anxieties in the Anxiety Writer. So it was a fun way for us to um, just kind of easily talk about struggles of youth, just finding love, meeting somebody on either a dating app, or it could just be in person,
Early
and
adulthood.
exactly early adulthood, and then merge that very simple notion with the sort of wild and fantastical nature of the tokusatsu stuff. So it was a mix of the reality and fantasy kind of put together, and I think that was the best merging of the two.
Alrighty. And another thing about the short is that there's also, it seems like it's very much, and I'm not sure if this was the intention, but was this an intention when making the short to kind of recapture the feeling that many children had when they grew up with shows like
Hmm.
Ultraman?
It definitely was. It was partially to showcase the glee of these shows, and the delight that you feel after watching them, especially when you're a kid. But also to my main goal was to also to have people feel that, but also to showcase to new audiences who have never seen shows like Ultraman, Kamen Rider, or like Super Sentai, to audiences who haven't seen them, and give them a taste of how they would make you feel, and the kind of earnest, cheesy way that they tell stories. And again, like this is kind of why I wanted to rewatch the original Star Trek, is that like the original Star Trek by today's standards can be considered cheesy, or some might say schlocky, which I would disagree with, but it has this earnest sort of feeling to it that I really wanted to capture. So it's both trying to recapture that feeling of watching the show as children, but also for people who haven't seen these shows as children or even as adults, uh, showing them how they are generally supposed to make you feel.
Hmm. And also, it seems like you wanted to like kind of to go back to a point earlier that you wanted to do like a playful
Hmm.
examination of overcoming like personal anxieties.
Exactly. Yeah.
And would you be interested in doing any more tokusatsu shorts in the future that deal with a similar kind of direction that was portrayed in Everyday Man?
Yeah, I would love to do some more tokusatsu stuff. Obviously, uh, tokusatsu is such a difficult thing to tackle when you don't have a lot of money to spend on films, and if you're an independent filmmaker, you usually have no money. So this we were only able to get away with it because it was a parody, and Anno did
Mhm.
the same thing, where Anno was only able to get away with it because it's just him in a Ultraman jacket doing Ultraman poses and fights, and that would never work as a straightforward tokusatsu story. But
It's a
because
fan
it's a
film.
parody, it's a fan film, exactly, and because it's a parody, it's a fan film, and it's made with so much love and care. That's why we're able to accept that. So if I were to tackle tokusatsu next, I would like to not do a parody, do an actual like either monster or hero thing with the proper money and budget and time that it deserves, and do something that talks about either youth or just human nature using either monsters or aliens or heroes, that kind of thing. So I'd love to. I have a semi idea of a monster thing I'd like to do in the future, but it'll take some money and time. So I'm holding off for now, but I would definitely love to do some more stuff in the similar vein.
Awesome. And I'd look forward to seeing that,
Thank you.
of course. Now to transition a little bit, I mentioned earlier that you have been a production assistant before. You happen to be a production assistant for the film Shin Godzilla, directed by
Hmm.
Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi.
Hmm.
And I guess my question to you is, what was that experience like for you, especially, being a production assistant on,
Hmm.
such a big budget Japanese film production?
Hmm. I really have. I can only really use one word, and it's I'm honored. Like I'm very, very honored to have been on that set and to have worked on it. And it was such a eye-opening experience. I was 20 years old at the time. It was 8 years ago, and
Time
I
flies.
had. Yeah, I know time flies. I still remember it so distinctly, but it was so long ago, which is insane. In 2 years, it'll be a decade, which is like that's scary to think about.
Mhm.
But it was such a crazy, crazy time, and I loved every second of it. And even though it was literally back-breaking work every single day, it was so much fun, and the people were so nice, and I learned so much about not just filmmaking, but tokusatsu filmmaking especially, and what the modern age of tokusatsu looks like. And I came in with a preconceived notion that it was going to be a man in a suit. There were going to be big sets of Tokyo ready to be destroyed. And when I walked in and I saw a giant blue screen, I thought, wow, okay, times they've really changed. This is not your dad's tokusatsu. This is like the new age tokusatsu, and
Mhm.
it really was amazing to see all these talented people work. Everyone is a master of their craft, and I can't commend them enough for doing such incredible stuff. And I watched them make model trains and model cars, and they all looked amazing. And uh, it really was, again, like I'm going to use the word again. It was such an honor to just be a small part of the larger cog that was Shin Godzilla. And yeah, it was just such an amazing time, and it's one of the proudest things that I've ever done in my life, and I can't I really want to give them a shout out. The Tokusatsu crew that I worked with, they were all just amazing, amazing people.
It's great. I mean, that's a great story. And I mean, it must have also opened your eyes also to just how different, sets are on Japanese
Hmm.
film productions compared to, say, how sets are compared in like American film productions.
Hmm.
Did you really realize that during your experiences on Shin Godzilla, just how different, sets are conducted in their respective countries?
Hmm. Yeah, it was very eye-opening. I had a bit of a culture shock when I walked onto the set when filming started commencing. Um, I've been a background actor in some other productions here, before Shin Godzilla and after, and so I know generally what like the vibe is like, and there's like a scriptie who's holding the script, and there's like multiple ADs running around, and there's like the PAs and the gaffers and stuff, but on the Shin Godzilla set, it seems that one person can have multiple jobs, which was not something that I was used to when I first saw it. So the gaffer could be doing multiple different things. The assistant cameraman could be doing multiple different things. I was doing multiple different things. So technically, I'm not really a production assistant. That's the only word in the English language that I'm like close to.
Mhm.
But I am just basically like an assistant to everybody on set, and my job was to just have was to make the production speedy and efficient, and make sure that if anyone needs help, I'm there to do something. So that was a very different experience from US sets, because in Hollywood, you have one person doing one role the whole time, and like if
Right.
you're a scripty, that's your entire role for the whole, like from start to finish. You hold the script and you run over and you give people lines, like that's your job. But in the Japanese production, because of the budget difference and the time difference, you kind of have to multitask. And in a way, it did help me in just in life, because it was a good like teacher in multitasking. uh, but it was quite different from my preconceived notion of filmmaking sets in Hollywood.
So definitely, it really was like an eye-opening experience.
Yeah, it was like a complete 180 from how it is over here. So I was like, wow, okay, that's different. Cool. Okay, so I had to kind of adjust myself.
I mean, right? And hopefully, more set experiences in the future.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Um, Now, of course, to go back to some of the points I made earlier, you are, of course, a filmmaker, and my question for you, Yoko, is what are the some of the challenges for you as an independent filmmaker?
Hmm. The main challenges that me and my crew face are honestly time and money. Those two things are things that we never have, unfortunately, and
Mm.
we do our very best to push through those challenges and make sure that we're able to create content that we can make at our budget level, our skill level, and how much time we have. So, if we take Everyday Man, for example, that was shot in 2 days. So we didn't have time to do like elaborate, crazy things. So we had to really manage the day, make sure we're getting the stuff that we need, make sure all the props are set, and have a very clear idea of what's going on. So it's a lot of on the fly thinking. And I've had the experiences of making plans, a lot of plans like storyboards and shot lists and stuff, and oftentimes I throw them out the door, because every time I get to set, there's like another thing that I have to change, and I have to just throw out the storyboard book and just go, okay, how do we solve this, because we can't do X, Y, and Z, so let's do A, B, C. So it's a lot
Mm.
of on the fly problem solving. And if you don't have a crew that's sort of on your wavelength and on your speed and on your time, it's very, very difficult to get anything done. So I'm very happy that I have a very dedicated crew of filmmakers that I can rely on. But long story short, it really is time and money that's the most challenging, because it's the things that you don't have.
Mhm.
And but those two things are essential to uh, not making a good movie, but to making a movie that actually fulfills what you want it to do.
Mhm.
So just uh, overcoming those problems is what indie filmmakers, especially ones who are just starting out like me, have to really think about, is how much money we have, how much time we have, and what we can do in that budget range, and make the most impressive thing you can without using a lot of resources.
Right. And but one of the great things though is that with independent filmmaking and the challenges is that it allows for creative minds to really, kind of think outside the box with how they're going to do things. I mean,
Hmm.
so many filmmakers had that's how they got their start. So,
Hmm. Yeah,
um,
I'm very thankful for this experience, even though I'm suffering all the time because we have no money and time, and all of us always scratch our heads and are pulling hair out of our heads, going, "Oh my God, how do we do this?" But I always think back to people like Sam Raimi, who was struggling on making Evil Dead, and Darren Aronofsky doing Pi on such a low budget, and those experiences really do create an artist. And so I'm very thankful for the struggles, even though they're horrible. I'm very
right.
thankful for the yeah. I know it's a love and hate relationship, but it's beautiful in a way.
Right. Yeah, but in a way, do you feel like that the positives outweigh the negatives in that regard from those
Absolutely.
experiences?
Absolutely, 100%. I think without growth, it's hard to um, formulate your own voice as an artist, and I think we've struggled a lot in the past, and we've made so many mistakes, but those mistakes have really shaped us into better artists, better filmmakers, and I think that is important. And without challenges, without struggles and obstacles, hardships, you can't really succeed in a big way, in my opinion. I think it's important to have those obstacles and learn how to swerve away from those obstacles. So I'm thankful for the experience, even though it's beating me down. But it's fine. I can handle it.
I mean, but good news is that, hard efforts, like you mentioned, hard efforts could pay off because you mentioned filmmakers like, Sam Raimi with Evil Dead, or to think of some Asian cinema examples, Shinya Tsukamoto with Tetsuo the
That's
Iron
right.
Man,
That's right. Yeah.
because that had a very hellish production, but,
Yeah.
it ended up paying off in the end. So,
Yeah. And you can see I can see the struggle behind every frame of that film, and that makes it so much more engaging, I think, to me as an audience member and also as a filmmaker, is that I see them like doing things they can't do, but they're trying anyway. Like that really like gets to me. And whenever I watch Tetsuo, I go like, I hate this movie because I love it and it's visionary. Like I hate it because there's so much passion behind it, and it makes me jealous of how just
why is it so
kinetic.
good?
And why is it so good? And every time I click it off, I'm like, oh my God, how do I beat this? This is so good. So yeah, it's always that like it's that fire of passion that you have when all things are on fire around you, and you have to kind of put out the fires yourself. So that generates that spark.
Do definitely though got to give yourself some credit because you also you formed your own production company out of those struggles. So
Yeah,
that's never easy to do, Yoko. So
thank you. I appreciate it. We're friends that are bonded over film struggles. So we're really a part of a family of starving artists. It's fun.
of hardships.
Yeah, exactly.
Um Now, speaking of your productions, besides Everyday Man, a fantasy tokusatsu parody, you also directed other impressive projects, and I think another notable one is Alien in Tokyo, which
Mhm.
came out about a year or two ago.
Mhm.
And of your recent filmmaking adventures, were there any like proud memories, like whether it be on Everyday Man or Alien in Tokyo for
Mhm.
you?
That's a good question. It's always difficult when you're in the moment because you're so stressed. But in hindsight, you can sort of look back and go, "Wow, that actually happened." But a recent memory that I'm very proud of is I would say to boil it down to a few things. I really enjoy filming in Japan. It's very fun, and I don't get to shoot a lot in other countries. But I've been to Japan 3 years in a row recently, and Japan isn't a country that I used to often go back to, but because of Shin Godzilla and everything, I try to go back as much as possible to like keep those connections alive, meet them, say hi, show face, and also to meet my family and everything. So I've been going back more recently since Shin Godzilla, and to have shot Alien in Tokyo, Everyday Man, and we have another short film that we shot this year that's coming out. Those were all so fun, and they were so challenging, but they were so fun because we only had 1 day of shooting for Alien Tokyo. We had 2 days of shooting for
One
Everyday Man,
day,
and we one
one
day we
day.
had 1 day,
Wow.
and we had 1 day to shoot the current film that we shot this year in Japan. So we never have time because I'm on vacation. I'm there for like 2 weeks and then I go back home. So we only have a certain amount of time to film and go. So that sort of spark kind of brought me back to my like high school days of shooting, because in high school we shot
Mm.
for like a day or two and it was kind of like an in out sort of situation. But to transition into other things I'm proud of is the films that I've shot here in the past 5 years have been more meticulously crafted as opposed to the other ones in high school, where again like they were just kind of like shoot, go, in, out, no storyboards, like barely a script, and just go shoot. But we've been really honing in on our craft in these past few years, and it's been a privilege to sort of see my friends take up a higher mantle and do some bigger, more impressive things. And we shot 2 feature films, one of which unfortunately could not was not able to be finished, but the second one coming up is in the works. And shooting that first feature film was I'm very proud of it, although it was very it was like life-threateningly stressful. But I'm very proud of what we were able to do in that time and money that we had, and we learned so much from that experience. So again, like it sort of ties back to our previous conversation about hardships. Is that most of the things I'm proud of um, were overcoming the hardships that all of us were facing at the same time, and me as a director and them as the actors and the crew and the staff. We were all, in that same boat, but overcoming that together has really been my proudest moments with them, and it really does help us as friends, but also as artists to grow and mature. So those things were very, very valuable.
Excellent. Um, and funny enough, the two short films I just mentioned, Everyday Man and Alien Tokyo, definitely show very much your range. Like Everyday Man kind of also shows, your humorous side, while Alien in Tokyo definitely shows a little bit more of like, okay, this is what I can do, what I want to do with a more like serious type of project. I mean,
Hmm.
especially in Alien Tokyo, because in Alien Tokyo, it was filmed during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that's a
Yeah.
focal point in the short film itself.
Hmm. That was an interesting time to shoot in Japan, because it was a time when uh, Japan was not open to foreigners, and because I have dual citizenship, I was able to go, and I must have been one of the only foreigners in the whole country at that time. And it's Japan is a country that a lot of foreigners go to, for vacation or business trips or whatnot. And it was so strange to see Tokyo so empty and so like tourist free. It was so strange. And shooting uh, during the height of the pandemic in 2021 for Alien Tokyo was such a strange experience, and it was so fun to just walk around the city with my friend Chester and shoot me in the scene and just b-roll of the streets and just the empty roads and empty alleyways that should have like people staggering out drunk at like 2 in the morning from izakayas and bars, but like it was just empty. So it was a strange experience, but it was really fun. And like you were saying about the range, is that I really wanted to try to do a different thing every time I went to Japan. So I told my friend Michael and Chester, I really don't want to do an Alien in Tokyo again because I already did it. So let's do something new. Let's do something fresh. And uh, when I pitched I wanted to do a tokusatsu thing, but it had to be a parody of some sort. That's when we were able to add some of the more humorous elements in the film. So I try as much as I can to not box myself in creatively in terms of style or narrative. And yeah, it's really fun trying different things.
Hmm. Good to know, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Um, Now, this is kind of speaking of COVID-19, what are your feelings on the current state of the film industry as it's still coping with the existence of COVID-19? Because,
Hmm.
recently, the public health emergency was officially declared over by
Mm.
World Health Organization, but now, COVID's not going anywhere. So how do you
Mm.
feel that, it's had such an impact on the film industry?
It was such a scary moment as a filmmaker and a movie fan when um, theaters were facing extinction for a few months, and there was that period in time when we didn't know if theaters would ever recover. And I'm so happy to see people returning to the theaters again, and box office is back pretty much to its full force. Now that Avatar, The Way of Water, grossed $2 billion last year,
And the
um,
Mario movie.
and the Mario movie hit a billion recently, so that's wild. And Guardians of the Galaxy is killing it right now. And every time I've seen it, it was packed with people. So I'm so happy to see people returning to the theaters. But I think it's we're in a tricky situation because we never know if another thing like COVID-19 will happen again. We don't know when the next pandemic can happen at any time, and we don't know. Um, but I think the film industry right now has learned a lot, and I think has made some mistakes, but also learned to trust the theatrical experience. And I get why in 2021, Warner had that very controversial move to put their new releases in theaters and on streaming at the same time, streaming for a month and in theaters for 2 months. And although I know that the business side was kind of a bit tricky, I understand the the idea of that move because it was a really bad time, and you kind of had to compromise. How do we get people to watch these movies that we've already shot, paid for, and they're in the editing bay doing visual effects? How do we get people to see them if people aren't going to the theater? So that stuff was really tricky. But now in 2023, you mentioned that the emergency is technically officially over, but obviously, even though a pandemic is over, it doesn't mean that the virus is gone.
Not going
Um,
anywhere.
it's not going anywhere,
It's here to
and
stay.
it's here to stay. Just like any other, virus we've faced. The cold used to kill people, hundreds of years ago, like in the masses,
Right.
but now, it's just a treatable thing. So, COVID is not going anywhere, even though the pandemic is done. But I, it's tricky because theaters are going to be affected either way if a new pandemic happens. But I think we're now looking in a way where theatrical releases still, I think, have a home because once the pandemic was slowly dying down, people rushed back to the theater to escape this, harsh reality that we're facing, and that's why these like big blockbusters like Top Gun and Avatar made so much money because it was such a big escape. So
Mm.
I think the film industry is recovering well, but my question, which I honestly don't have an answer for, is how do we prepare for a future potential pandemic if it ever happens again? And God forbid, because I don't want to go through that again.
Right.
Yeah, it
But
was so
unfortunately,
terrible.
unfortunately that is a reality, that another
Mhm.
pandemic could come down the line. We
Yeah,
just gotta
exactly.
we have to be better prepared for it.
Yeah, and and that goes across like all industries because all industries like were just like blindsided by that, and movies especially because u- unlike music or video games or other kinds of media,
YouTube
movies,
videos.
YouTube videos. There we go. Movies especially, you have to have that community experience, right, of being in a theater, being with people and seeing it with an audience, and that is such an important part. So how do you manage that when you can't be with people? You have to be distant and
Right.
you have to be, masked up and everything. So it's a challenge, and I don't know the answer to that, but I hope that the industry going forward can come up with something, a contingency plan to save movie theaters, and so we don't have to do this thing that we did before, where we had to worry about the state of the theatrical experience. And for a time, I really thought it was over.
Mm.
But I was so happy when they opened up, and in 2021, Godzilla vs. Kong really kicked off that like blockbuster season, and it made money. And at that moment, I thought, okay, theaters are back. Like we're fine. We can escape this dreading feeling of extinction. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm curious about how they want to prepare from here on out. And I hope they have something of a plan, because I really want theaters to live on, and I really want, AMC or Regal and any especially the indie theaters, because
Lemley,
they were the
Lemley.
ones. Yeah, they were the ones in threat, and a lot of indie theaters in New York City closed during the pandemic, and it was so sad to see that happen. So the point is, support theaters, local theaters, go to the movies safely, and yeah, that's sort of my
Buy those
thoughts on.
tickets.
Yeah, exactly. Buy those tickets, and make sure that they stay alive and they're not in danger anymore.
Right. And you've made it you're very you greatly value seeing movies in the theater.
Hmm.
However, as a follow-up question, how do you feel that this is kind of a almost a what do you say, devil's advocate type of way of
Hmm.
portraying this issue? Um, how do you now feel about the availability of streaming services that have helped for greater exposure to
Hmm.
foreign films? Because,
Hmm.
that has definitely happened during, especially the height of the pandemic, was, streaming services definitely did in a way take off, especially with
Hmm.
the availability of foreign cinema. So
Hmm.
even with valuing, the movie theater experience, how do you feel that the streaming services have now made foreign cinema and independent cinema more widely available?
That's a very good question. So I have no qualms with streaming in terms of as a platform. I really have no qualms with it. Even though obviously my my preferred viewing of a movie is in a dark theater with a giant screen, surround sound. That is the best way to watch a film, but obviously, foreign films don't get the mass marketing, mass sort of release that other movies have, unfortunately. So, streaming honestly is, I think, a really good way to showcase independent cinema and foreign cinema to audiences that may not have been exposed to them. And I know a lot of people got into RRR when it popped on Netflix, and it gained popularity, since then. And after that, people rushed into the theater to then watch it again on the big screen. So I think it's a valuable thing to have streaming services um, push independent filmmaking and foreign cinema into the forefront. And I think that's when that is a great tool for uh, cinephiles, general audiences, filmmakers to be exposed to a lot of things. And obviously, during the pandemic, I was watching hundreds of movies and shows on streaming, and I love streaming. I use it all, like, pretty much every day. I stream something on Netflix or HBO Max or Disney Plus or Hulu. So I am not a anti streaming person. I definitely see the value in streaming, and how it can um help filmmakers get their films to a wider audience. And I think it's a great opportunity. And obviously, as somebody like me, streaming services are a great tool, because they're hungry for more filmmakers and more stories, and it's very valuable for somebody like me who wants to get into the industry. So I'm very much supporting of their efforts. But obviously, again, the theatrical experience will never be replaced by streaming. I think they both have a place in the industry and how we view movies and shows, and they're separate experiences. Like, one, you sit in the comfort of your own home, watch it with yourself, your family, your friends, and you can enjoy something. But the theatrical experience is really seeing the movie the way the director intended for you to see it, is in a giant screen, darkly lit, with people around you, and you can hear their reactions, you can enjoy the movie with them. And that is what I think all filmmakers want out of their projects. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I assume that's what they want. But especially for foreign cinema, like uh, I know Parasite just popped up on HBO Max recently, so I think a lot of people are seeing it there, and um, so I love the idea of bringing foreign films on streaming so that people can see them, because those films are hard to find if you're not like a cinephile. If you're not actively searching for them, it's not a thing that's easily attainable. And if you go to your local theater and you're not in a place where they have like a indie or foreign film cinema theater, you're not going to find movies like RRR or Parasite sometimes. And those two movies are like widely shown, and still like it's hard to find them sometimes. So
Right.
streaming is great for that aspect, and I think it's a very valuable tool. So yeah, definitely stream stuff if you can, but also uh go watch re-released foreign films or indie films in theaters, like Old Boy's coming in August in theaters
Yep.
as a re-release. uh Everyone go to that. Like that is uh a way to actually financially support the foreign films. So see it at home, but also if you can see it again in a theater if possible.
Absolutely. Like have like a healthy balance of both. You can do streaming services, but of course, go see a movie once in a while in the theater and
Exactly.
get immersed in a very like almost dreamlike experience because sometimes
Hmm.
that's what the movie theater experience really is. It's
Yeah,
after all an experience.
yeah, and that's the word, is immersed. You just hit the nail right on the head. Is that is what you feel in a theater, and that's really important.
Right. I mean, remember when Shin Godzilla came out in theaters for that limited theatrical run back in
Mm.
2016, that you could definitely get the feeling that that was a movie that was intended to be viewed on the big screen.
Hmm. And you heard the gasps of the audience and even the laughs, and I think that just makes it so much more enjoyable, as opposed to sitting in your home alone at like 7 p.m. or something, and you just pop it on, and the idea of like turning it off whenever sort of aggravates me. Like I like watching a movie like from start to finish, like especially if it's a new movie that I haven't seen before. Like I will watch it from start to finish. No, like try not to pause if I can help it. So again, like the immersive experience of like not being able to pause or skip or stop the movie, and just surrendering yourself to the experience is really really important, and I hope that never goes away, because that's such a valuable, like almost religious experience if you're a movie person. Like the movie theater is my church. Like it really is the place that I go to all the time, and it's the place that I feel very happy, and uh, no matter what I end up seeing, I'm just I walk out feeling that the trip to the theaters was worth it.
Right. Excellent. That's actually a great way of putting it, is that, in the end, it was worth it. It was worth putting the money down and it was worth,
Hmm.
you know, again, being immersed in such a
Hmm.
unique way of
Exactly.
presentation. It's
Yeah.
like, the same reason why so many folks still love going to see stage shows or Broadway plays.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It, it it's
100%.
it's not like it's I mean, of course you can still experience it on streaming services and appreciate it for what it is, but still the theater experience, there's something very, how do you say, special about it.
It's unique. It's a very specific experience that you can only get in a theater. And uh, sometimes when you watch a thing in theaters and then you watch it again at home, the impact of it is not as strong as how you felt in theater watching with an audience. And like, when you watch movies that people cheer in, that really makes you enjoy it so much more, and you feel like you're part of a big family just watching it in a dark room with people just surrounding you. That
Mhm.
experience is something that I really don't want to go away. And I know some people were very like anti streaming because it was taking away from that experience, but I don't view streaming that way, because I always viewed it as a complementary sort of like addition to the film experience,
Complimentary.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's you can't have one without the other, and if you just had streaming, it's lonely. If you just had theatrical movies, it's lonely. You have to have both.
Best of both
So
worlds.
best of both worlds, exactly. So the message from both of us is go to the theater, but also watch stuff on streaming.
Yeah, and I don't think, especially now, I don't think movie theaters are in danger. I think movie
No,
theaters
yeah.
now, I think they're going to continue thriving. And, if anything, just like streaming services, movie theaters, especially like Lemley theaters, for example, are going
Mm-hmm.
to help with further exposure to a lot of independent films or foreign
Mm-hmm.
cinemas. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'm with you there that movie theaters are going to be okay.
Yeah, I think we're in a safe space, thank God.
Safe space. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're now in a sanctuary state.
Yeah, exactly. We're okay.
We're okay. Well, Yoko, it's been a pleasure having you on Asian Movie Pulse interviews. Thank you for taking the time to do this interview.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Um, Before we wrap things up, are there any upcoming projects that you would like to promote?
Yes. I am working on my feature film right now called Citizen Khan. I'm neck deep in post production right now. And just to briefly talk about it, it's a feature film that's sort of based on my experiences making Last Session, uh, which was meant to be my first feature film, but it was unfortunately not being able to finish, and it was a very harsh production and was very difficult where everything around you was going wrong, and it was a thing that really pushed me to my like breaking point. And I wrote a script with my friend Michael about that experience, and it's about a 25-year-old filmmaker who's trying to make his first feature film, but everything's going wrong. And while he's making the film, he has these conversations with a imaginary Orson Welles who he imagines in his brain. And why he thinks about Orson Welles is because Orson Welles is his uh, a favorite filmmaker, but also because Orson Welles was 25 when he made his first feature film, Citizen Kane. Hence why the movie's called Citizen Khan.
Mhm.
So that is in the works at the moment. We're very close to getting it locked. I'm doing the visual effects right now because Michael, who is playing Orson Welles, is in black and white. So I have to rotoscope his body for every frame of film that he's in. So that's a challenge. And the whole film was shot in one take. It is a one take 90-minute film, no hidden
Right.
cuts, and it was shot on my iPhone. So that was a big challenge. But it's coming very soon. And I have another short film that I alluded to earlier, where I shot a film at in Japan this year, and it's a short film. It's called Synthetic Love, and it's just to briefly talk about it. It's about a boy, a young man who uh, uh, has a robot, a female robot, um, as a sort of dating advisor, and it's set in the future. It's set in a near future where Japan had to create a program with the government to bump up population. So they have these uh, robots to help young people adjust to dating. So the film is about the female robot technically breaking up with the human young man. So
Oh,
that is the story, and it was shot on Oguchi Dam that Kamen Rider was shot in.
oh, sweet.
Yeah, so that was a fun experience shooting, and it was shot in the rain, and that was so stressful of like carrying umbrellas over a camera and like shooting, but it was very very fun. So that's also coming out this year. So yeah, those two projects are my most recent ones, and I hope you'll get to see them.
All right. Excellent. Well, of course, also for viewers watching this, Yoko Higuchi's work is available on YouTube on the Resistance Pictures YouTube channel. You can find his short film Everyday Man available on YouTube as well as Alien in Tokyo on YouTube, and they are available to watch and definitely give them both a viewing.
Thank you.
Well, of course, Yoko. Well, Thank you for tuning in, everyone, and thanks again, Yoko, for being on the show. And this is Asian Movie Pulse Interviews, tuning out.